Good morning, everyone. Today, we are going to focus on a very controversial issue which has not been examined yet by Italian courts, the revocation of a license in a BIM project. In particular, I would like to talk about the case when the contractor grants the client the right to use his intellectual property uploaded in the common data environment for the purposes of the procurement contract. In order to share this IP in the CDE, we all know that the client shall sublicense the IP to the other contractors who have access to the CDE. Now, let's imagine that the client suspends payments to the contractor. Will the contractor be allowed to revoke the license to the client? Well, according to practice, you would think that the revocation is a standard and well-accepted clause in a licensing agreement. But it is not the case in BIM project. That first interpretation comes out in the BIM Protocol 2nd edition 2018 issued by the UK Construction Industry Council, which states that the project team member, which is the contractor, grants to the employer, which is the client, an non-exclusive, royalty-free and irrevocable license to transmit, copy and use the material and any proprietary work. Why? The reason is quite simple, and the ratio lies in the balance of interests between the parties. Here we have two different interests. One is the contractor's interest to be paid for his professional activity. The other is not the sole interest of the client. It is the interest of all the parties, of all the players of the BIM project who have spent their time and effort relying on the licensed IP developed by the contractor, who is now seeking for revocation. It follows that a revocation of the license granted to the client would also revoke the IP rights granted by the client to those players through the sublicensing agreement. So, in our balance of interests, we have from one side the single interest of the damaged contractor. But from the other side, we have multiple interests that will be affected by the revocation. That is why the UK CIC preferred not to allow the revocation of the license. A very similar scenario can then be seen in the British High Court of Justice judgment Trent Engineering Limited versus Mott MacDonald Limited in 2017. Here, the focus is not expressly the revocation of the license granted to the client, but the revocation of the access to the CDE by the contractor who was at the same time host of the CDE. The court ruled that way. Without restoring access to the relevant database, the project cannot be progressed. The client would be forced to start the project from square one, having lost a year of progress. In those circumstances, it would be appropriate for the court to permit the status quo by allowing the client access to the design data that had already been completed by the contractor at the time that the suspension termination occurred, so as to allow the client to progress the project. Again, the interest of the client, which is the interest of the other players involved in the procurement contract, wins against the individual interest of the damaged contractor. Thanks for watching. See you next time.